Okay, so the render is done, and we are now here in After Effects, and we're going to pull in the AEC file. So the first thing I'm going to do is double-click here, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab my AEC file. It's going to take a minute. It's going to crunch all the data, and it's going to load this up into After Effects. So it creates three folders here. We have the alley. We see what we have. We have the solids, and here is the ball with the 3D position data. And then we have our special passes, which one is an RGBA pass. We have three of the object buffer passes. So the object buffer passes, we double click that. That's one of the passes for the 1618 signs that we had on the back. There's the one for the ball. So you can see that go back there. Turn that off. Open this back up. So all we need to do at this point is double click on the comp, and everything's going to pop into place. Now we see that we have some issues with the color. So I'm going to come over here to File, Project Settings. I'm going to change this to 32-bit. I'm going to change the color space to Adobe RGB. And I'm going to check Linearize Working Space. Click OK. And that's going to give us something more accurate to what we had in our 3D program. Now, if we come down here and take a look, we can see what we've got set up here. We had multiple cameras in the scene when I originally set that scene up. That's why we have all these cameras in here. We don't need all these cameras. The ball right here, I click on that, you can see the path in 3D space that the ball took. Okay, so what we'll ultimately do is we'll attach some objects to this in order to get some interesting looking effects. And then it came down here, and these are the different passes that it's separated out into. So if we move this, you can see that this was our reflection pass. We turn that on and off. You can see that we can control our reflections independently. This is our ambient occlusion pass, and you can see shadows in different places on the ambient occlusion pass. This is our global illumination pass. That's a huge part of our render. We have our shadows here. Not a whole lot there. The specular. The diffuse. Okay, so I hope you're starting to see the incredible amount of power that you have by separating all these out independently. I mean, you could come over and, for the shadows, for instance, the ambient occlusion, if you look at the ball here, you can see that we could control how much or how little of that shadow shows up. We could take it out completely, or we could duplicate this layer, Control D, to get a darker shadow, or we could put effects in here from After Effects that would minimize the look of that shadow. So there's just a whole lot of control that you have whenever you separate these passes out, doing multi-pass rendering. Okay, so what are we going to do with this? Well, let's pretend that we had a client that said, listen, we need this ball to glow, and we need sparkles flying off of it as it rolls down the alley. I have no clue why you'd want that, but let's say that our client wants that. Okay, well, how do we go about making that happen? The first thing that we're going to want to do is separate this ball from the rest of the scene so that we can manage it independently of the rest of the scene. So how do we do that? Well, let's come over here to our special passes. We're going to grab our image sequence here. I'm going to drag that into a new comp, like so. And then I happen to know, just from clicking these earlier, that object buffer 3, was the mask of the ball. Remember this? Okay. So I'm going to take this object buffer, I'm going to drag it on top of the image sequence. I'm going to hit F4 on my computer, come over here, and I'm going to check on LumaMat. So now we have this ball independent of everything else. In our transparency grid, you can see that this is all by itself now. All right. So now it's just a matter of coming back to our original comp, finding that new ball, which is called Alley 2. So I'm just going to hit enter, call that ball. And then I'm going to drag this into my scene. Now, in this particular scene, I don't need all of this. So what I'm going to do, I just wanted to show you how it's useful if you have it in here. But I'm just going to delete all of these. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to grab my RGBA pass, which is right here. I'm going to put that at the bottom. Same thing with these. I don't need all these. Okay, so let's take a look at that glow. Let me zoom up on this ball a little bit. I'm going to come over here to the effects and presets. And I'm going to type in glow here. Come down to the bottom. Find my good old-fashioned glow. I'm going to drag that on the ball. I'm going to come over here to color B. I'm going to change that to something that more fits our scene. I'm going to come up here, the glow threshold, take that down to, say, 25. Maybe 50 for the radius. Take that up. Take that down a little bit. And there we go. So now if we turn the effect on and off, you can see that we have a slight glow on our ball. And we have done that, or I should say we could only do that because we have separated that ball from everything else in the scene. Okay, so let's move on to the sparkles. So we're going to use a third-party plugin called Particular, and that's made by the good people over here, or it's sold by the good people over here at Red Giant. Now, this is an incredible plugin that everyone in motion graphics should have. Just show you real quickly. So this is just amazing stuff. All of this is done in Particular. I just can't imagine working without this. So it's a 3D particle plugin that works completely in After Effects. All right, so if you don't have Particular, go to Red Giant and pick this up. You really need it. Now we're going to do something much simpler in here for the purpose of this tutorial, but you'll still get an idea of how it works. So let's get that in the scene. Now let me get a little room here. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to right click, I'm going to say New, Solid. I'm going to call this Particular. And it's going to put it up here, drag it down. I'm going to come up to Effect, Trap Code, click on Particular. Now, if I just solo Particular and scrub through the timeline, you can see that it's a particle emitter. It emits particles in one place. So what we're going to want to do is take these particles and attach them to our ball. And we're going to attach it to that path, that 3D path that we got out of our 3D program. So how do we go about doing that? Well, if we come over to the ball, click that, click on P, we have our position data. And that's the position data, the 3D. We have the X, Y, and Z position data of this path. If we click on Particular, come to the emitter, we have position X, Y here, and position Z here. So what we need to do is Alt or Option click on the position X, Y stopwatch here. We come down here, we're going to pick whip this information to the position data. Now we click outside of there. Same thing with the Z data. I'm going to Alt or Option click that. I'm going to take the pick whip. I'm going to come down here. And I am going to select the actual Z number here. then we click. So now what we have is our particular layer is linked to our ball. So now if we come down the timeline here, you can see what's happening. All right. Okay, so let's sort of get this particle system looking a little better. So I'm going to hit the home key. Go back to the beginning of my animation. I'm going to click on the particles per second first. Now, at the beginning, I don't want any particles coming out. So at frame 0, I want 0. I'm going to put a keyframe there. I'm going to push the page down button to go forward 1 frame. I'm going to go to, let's say, 300 particles. Now I'm just eyeballing this. I'm going to come over to about here. So let's come over to the particular layer. This is where we want to have a keyframe for the particles per second. So at the beginning, that should be 0. Put a keyframe, go forward 1 frame, go to 300 particles. Come somewhere over towards the middle. Maybe a little too far there. And we'll put another keyframe here. So we'll hit U on the keyboard so we can see our keyframes. Another keyframe there. Go forward 1 more frame, and we'll take the particles per second back down to 0. All right. So let's just RAM preview this. See what we have. Okay, so we're back and we've got a RAM preview done. So you can see what's happening here. The particles are indeed following the ball, traveling with it. We definitely are going to need to make some adjustments because right now it doesn't look like what we are after. So let's go ahead and start doing that. Let's come back out here where we can see a little better. So I'm going to twirl that up and go into my particles. We're not going to go into a lot of this right now, but we'll get the idea. So I'm going to change my particle type from sphere to glow sphere. All right. I'm going to change the size to maybe 4. Random. Take that up a lot. Let's go to the size over life. We pull this back a little bit. We can see that better. We have some presets over here. So this is the preset that I'm going to use. Okay, so it'll start out with more particles, and as they go further on, they'll die out. Let's take our opacity down a little bit. The opacity random, again, want a lot of randomness. Again, we'll go to opacity over life. We'll use the same preset. Now let's go down a little further. We've got our color. Now let's try and get something that's somewhat similar here. So let's just take our eyedropper tool, click on something like that. Okay, let's play around a little bit with the transfer mode. Let's go to add. See what screen does. That's normal. So we're not getting a lot of change there. Now we could come over here and we could put another glow on the particles themselves, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another trap code plugin called Star Glow. And I'm going to come over and take a look at the Star Glow parameters. And you can see we can come over here. We've got a lot of presets. So let's take a look at maybe something like white star. See how that affects us. Not getting a lot going on there though. And what we need to do is come over to the pre-process and turn this threshold down. When we do that, we start getting some of these stars. Let's take a look at some different presets that we have here. Warm star. There we go. Looks like it might work. There we go. And you've got other parameters here. You can boost the light. Now you could take that up crazy. But I think subtle is better. Streak length. You know, you could come in here and you could just play forever. Go ahead and do a RAM preview of this. I'll be right back when it's done. Okay, so we're back. We've got everything working. We have the ball going down the alley with the particular layer on it attached to it. And we've actually got our ball glowing a little bit. Now you could play with this and refine it quite a bit, but for the purposes of the tutorial, I think you get the idea. So this is multipass rendering, a very powerful technique that you can do from within Cinema 4D.